Father, this next one is from a viewer who says we had previously answered one of his emails, and he says that he realizes that a traditional Catholic priest could perhaps not officially or theologically declare that the Novus Ordo popes are invalid or illegitimate. But he said, Father, it seems that after the 50 or 60 or more years of evidence with all of the, quote, papal heresies and blasphemies and sacrileges that have been spewing forth from the Vatican's, from the Vatican, it seems to be proof positive, Father, that these Novus Ordo popes do not have the faith, that they're modernists in place. I mean, he says that this just seems to be logic and common sense. So how can we not, after this half century or more of evidence, how can we not for certain say that these Novus Ordo popes are not Catholic, that they are invalid and illegitimate?
Well, Tom, I think you know that I think we have certainly the evidence and the logic to support that conclusion. I think logically it is the conclusion we'd have to draw. Anyone who's knows the evidence, right? Not everybody necessarily is aware of it, but those who really study the question and really know what the New Order popes have produced, what they've said, the statements they've made, and compare it to the faith or contrast it with the Catholic faith, I think they'd come to the conclusion that they don't have the faith. They don't have the Catholic faith. Yeah. And logically they would say, well, you can't be a member of the church, you have to be a Catholic unless you have the faith, so how can you be the Pope if you don't have the faith? And they would be supported by theologians in the church who would say that's a perfectly Catholic position to hold. And they would, I think, be very right in saying that those who dispute that point, especially those who say, well, I agree with you that, say, for example, Francis does not have the Catholic faith and does not have the virtue of faith, but he's still the Pope. I would argue that that is completely illogical and not ill-theological. Right? It is actually against the kind of the common teaching of the Catholic Church that you have to have the faith to be the Pope. Can't defect from the faith publicly and be the Pope. But anyway, but again, I mean, to declare somebody with ecclesiastical authority, to declare someone for the whole world, and for every soul in the world, as a matter of, as though it was a dogmatic fact that someone is not the Pope. I don't have that authority, and you don't either. I mean, it takes authority, okay? And even though we may be thoroughly convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that, for example, Francis cannot be the Roman Pontiff, he cannot be the Vicar of Christ on earth, he cannot be at the same time the Supreme Pontiff of the New Order, the modern faith and the Novus Ordo religion, and the Supreme Pontiff of the true Catholic faith, right? Even though we're absolutely convinced of that, that in itself doesn't give us the authority to make some kind of dogmatic pronouncement about that, and to enjoin that on the consciences of other people, that they have to believe it because we say it, because we see it. We don't have the power to enjoin the consciences of other people to believe our logical and theological conclusions. You understand what I mean?
Sure.
Okay. It's a matter of having the power of magisterium to declare that for everybody in the world, and I know I don't have that power of magisterium. I would argue very decisively, I think, that I would hope convincingly too. You see, here's the problem, though. When you talk to people about this, they immediately get very uncomfortable because they think the point that you're making, the conclusion that you're driving toward, is basically telling them that Christ has failed, his promises proved to be false, the church herself is annihilated. They think you're arguing they think that's what you're actually saying. And you're not. You're not saying that at all. In fact, what you're saying is that they're the ones who are arguing that. They're the ones who are saying that the church can be led and misled the entire church can be misled into practicing a false religion by a true pope. And not only a false religion, but a religion that is antithetical to the true Catholic faith, the true Catholic religion. And we know that that's impossible. So the problem is you have two sides of the question. Each is thinking that the other essentially is saying the church is finished, it's all over, and Christ has failed. And I don't think either one of them is saying that. But they're drawing the conclusions from each other's premises, as it were, that they must be saying that. And they're desperate to argue the point to say, no, Christ's promise has not failed. The church has not failed. Quite the contrary. But anyway, as I say, I think the problem with those who are so absolutely determined to somehow to insist that Francis is the vicar of Christ on earth and is the supreme pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, I think they have the seeds of the destruction of the church in their minds without even realizing it, because they are constantly changing the church's concept of the papacy itself in order to suit Francis. They are basically falling into Francis's net. I mean, he's arguing for the dirty church and the smell of the sheep. The church was always a mess. The church was always a mess, right? Make a mess, he says to people. And so they're falling into that mindset. Yeah, the church was always like this. The church always had these problems, They were always duking it out, trying to argue, well, what's the faith? And, the leadership of the church was always full of bad people doing bad things and arguing, disagreeing about matters of faith. It was always that way. And they're actually the Novus Ordo conservatives out there who are falling into that mindset. I mean, Skojak, or whatever his name is, a prime example of that, 1 Peter 5, right? He's kind of fallen into that mindset. And this is the danger of just thinking, that defending the papacy of Francis at all costs, and never accepting the possibility that he's not the supreme pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church. We all admit that he is the supreme pontiff and the pope of the Novus Ordo. We all acknowledge that. The question is, can he be at the same time the supreme pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church? Mm-hmm. And there are those who say, absolutely not. There's who say, yeah, there's no problem with that. And I think they're in big trouble. I think eventually, if they stay with that, they're going to wind up theologically in big trouble. And they might even wind up losing their faith over it.
Mm-hmm. Father, I once heard someone say that by refusing to take the dogmatic sedevacantist position, that you are somehow leaving the door open for at least the possibility that Francis is a Catholic and the possibility that you are in communion with Francis. Is that what you're doing by refusing to take a non-dogmatic, or by refusing to take the dogmatic sedevacantist position?
Oh, so one has to take the dogmatic sedevacantist position, otherwise he's compromising.
Right.
And I'd say that's nonsense.
Really? Why?
Yeah. I'd say, well, I'd like to know what their argument is, why it's so. I mean, they're affirming that, so the burden of proof is on them to show that it's true. Yeah. And I don't know what their arguments are to say you have to have a dogmatic stance that he's not the Pope, because if you don't have anything less, if you don't have that, then you are leaving the door open to being in communion with him and that he is the Pope and so on and so forth. But, the Church's requirement is not that if somebody could possibly be the Pope, then you have to accept it. The Church's position is you have to be convinced that somebody really is the Pope before you accept it, right? The Church's principle given to us back, during the time of the Great Western Schism was Papa dubius, Papa nullus, in effect, right? You have to be sure that the authority that is real, right? That he really has that authority before you're bound to obey him. And even then, I mean, if he commands you to do something that is against the faith, you couldn't obey him anyway. But all the more so, a fortiori, if the very basis of any authority he claims to have is is at best doubtful, you do not have the obligation to obey when there's a doubtful authority behind a command. Besides, I mean, the person, whoever is saying this, that you have to have a dogmatic position on this subject, I think is wrong, just downright wrong, because if one is personally convinced, according to the principles that the Church gives him, that Francis cannot possibly be the Supreme Pontiff of the Novus Ordo and the Supreme Pontiff of the traditional Catholic Church at the same time, it's because the faith of the Novus Ordo is modernism, and the faith of the traditional Catholic Church is the traditional Catholic faith, and St. Pius X has explained they are antithetical. One is the negation of the other. They're not compatible. I think having that conviction personally is all one needs. That doesn't leave the door open to any of these maladies that this individual or whoever they are is suggesting. So no, you don't need to claim the power of magisterium to declare that one's own conviction that's met cannot be the Supreme Pontiff. And as I say, I mean, you're actually backed up by theological opinions of worthy Catholics, teachers, doctors of the faith from the past. So it's a perfectly traditional Catholic position to hold. The only problem that I see is where people argue, and we've talked about this before, that if you have an extended period here where you have men who you are convinced cannot possibly be the Supreme Pontiffs of Christ here on earth, the Vicar of Christ on earth, then the Church, which ordinarily chooses its popes by the electors, the cardinals, the clergy of Rome, would have died out. They would have been installed by non-popes and would not be true cardinals, and so they couldn't really elect a true pope. And their argument is, well, then in that case, the Church could run out of, could be possible. The Church would not have any more popes. The line of popes would be finished in the Church, right? This is what the argument is. And for the longest time, I mean, I myself hesitated over that and thought, well, are we ready to say that? I mean, is it really possible that could be so? Let's face it, that's a very serious question, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know that that is so. I mean, I don't know that that is so. I see how the Council of Constance in the 1400s addressed this very question during the Great Western Schism. And I see that the Church has other means, and God has other means, to solve such problems. We look in the book of Destiny, the book of the Apocalypse, and Father Kramer's commentary on the book of the Apocalypse, and we see these two witnesses, the two witnesses who will come and will actually be the leadership here of the Church at that time. And Father Kramer says it appears that Pope will be himself silenced, and the papacy will be usurped during that time. So we know that's not a non-Catholic position to hold, because Father Kramer's commentary is accepted by the Church and has been all this time as perfectly Catholic. So those who would denounce that position as being a non-Catholic position are wrong. They're just not speaking as for the Catholic Church when they make that pronouncement. Those who anathematize, those who personally hold the state of God's position, those who anathematize them are speaking for themselves, but they're speaking out of ignorance, and they're not speaking for the Roman Catholic Church, because the Church has not anathematized people for this, who think this, for this reason, that they have good reason to say that Francis and those who preceded him have not had the Catholic faith and therefore cannot be Supreme Pontiffs. There are worthy Catholic doctors and teachers who have upheld that principle. Okay. So anyway, I loathe talking about the whole subject because I feel it is sort of a cul-de-sac, or even a vicious circle we can go round and round and round. Whereas what we should be doing is really talking about this whole issue in a very serious theological, tightly reasoned theological fashion, and stop throwing stones. Those who have the true faith and hold to the Catechism of the Council of Trent and its teachings, those who want the traditional Roman rite of Mass and sacraments, those who recognize Catholic tradition as the supreme authority, right, the work of the Holy Ghost, over all popes who ever lived or ever can live, those who recognize that should band together and hold together the traditional Catholic faith and stop arguing points that really are important questions, but questions that we really are not equipped to answer right now. But we know we can answer the essential questions that tell us what we must do. And that is, we must practice the traditional Catholic faith, that and that alone. And not follow the modernists on their mad joyride, right, of the Novus Ordo.